Terry, you're here at Used Car Week, and you just wrapped up a packed fraud prevention session. What were the biggest fraud trends you shared with the audience this week?
Yeah, Jay. Wow, it's been an exciting week so far. Lots going on, of course. AI still on everybody's mind, fraud prevention on everybody's mind, consumer affordability, that's obviously on everybody's mind. But what we really found after the last fraudcast we did was when we talked about that PSA, that public service announcement that we put out there, hundreds of identities were being put into legacy web apps, credit web apps, pre-qualification web apps, and they were using those to find individuals that were creditworthy. And we came up with a term for that, and those were fraud incubators, because in that term, fraud incubator talks about or is really referred to as these companies that are pushing all these names, address, phone numbers into these credit prequal web apps, these form, five-liners, as people like to say, and returning back pre-qualifications. And then those names and addresses are then being used for other fraudulent activity. So now we're calling these legacy web apps fraud incubators because they're creating these names and addresses to be used for fraudulent activity.
I was watching you. You were in an interview, and it kind of came up, and you were talking about it. And
Mhm.
at the time, you seemed like that this is exactly what we're dealing with. Do people realize that they're fraud incubators?
No, and unfortunately, we've been talking about this in the industry and nobody is really paying attention to it because it affects the thousands and thousands of dealers. So you look at that and you tell somebody that they're doing something that's potentially going to harm consumers, and you just and what I'm afraid is going to happen is there could be some type of class action lawsuit, and by then, because it's a known problem, a known issue with fraud with these legacy credit web apps, pre-qualification web apps, now that it's out there, it's going to make it easier for these class action lawsuits to be won because it's out there. You can't deny it. It's going to be like, well, I didn't know. Yeah, no, everybody knows. We're talking about it, and you just can't keep denying it. It's out there, and we got to deal with it as an industry.
I mean, I feel like I'm seeing it too. I think what I'm wondering is, did companies underestimate the amount of fraud and how fast it would ramp up? What happened? How did this happen so quickly?
Well, it only happened, we only knew about it. We only knew about it because I found out through a previous pre-qualification web app that we had, and I was on a dealer thread, and we found that it wasn't just one dealer, it was multiple dealers. It was happening with hundreds and hundreds of names and addresses from all over the country, and it's not going to stop. They're able to find a way to get these fraudulent prequals out there. It's not going to stop. It's only going to get worse because nobody's doing anything about it. It's like a free for all, and it's going to continue to snowball. It will. I know it. I've seen it before in other types of activities.
Terry, you released a PSA earlier this year after discovering automated bot attacks hitting dealer websites. What's happened since then? Are you seeing the issue grow as AI gets stronger?
I'm sure it's growing. Actually, there was another digital retailing platform, and I'm not going to name who it is, that I did find out while I was here at Used Car Week that they were hit with ID fraud. Now, what are they doing about it? Well, obviously nobody knows about it, so it's been kept quiet. And instead of keeping it quiet, um, it needs to be fixed. It needs to be talked about. It needs to be shared. You can't be embarrassed by it. I mean, it's going to happen, right? It's going to happen. So you put on your big boy pants and you come up and you say, look, we got to deal with this, right? You can't ignore it. You can't just. It's not the way we operate. We cannot continue to operate this way in our industry.
You launched Fraud Stack Monday as an ongoing education series for dealers and lenders. What kind of alerts and updates can people expect each week?
Well, what's interesting is it's an International Fraud Awareness Week. It's like this is not just our industry. This is like all industries worldwide, right? And I get reports all the time, which is what I'm trying to do with the Fraud Stack Monday is let people know what's going on. We've got to be educated. We got to get our heads out of the sand and be like, yes, we've got to take care of this head on. I mean, Shaq's car was stolen, right? He had a Range Rover, brand new Range Rover, and the Shaq had his car stolen right off of a transport. So it's it's everywhere, and the more that's being talked about, the more people are doing something with it and dealing with it, and we got to do it.
One thing you emphasized in your used car week talk is that fraud must be stopped before the credit soft pull. How does VeriQual use just a phone number to verify identity and run a prequal in real time?
Yeah, so that's part of our platform that we have a patent pending on because we're putting identity verification first before the credit pre-qualification or the credit pull, whether it's a soft pull or hard pull. You obviously want to make sure you're dealing with the real person, not just a real person, but the real person. And you want to make sure that it's being verified before you start pulling credit. So it's a platform that we've created with identity verification with just a phone number with the OTP. That way we can verify. But even that's not the final, right? We talked about the fraud stack. We're kind of at the top of the funnel where we start with the customer. Then it goes through driver's license scan and other fraud prevention, which we're partnered with. MavSign's one of our partners on the fraud stack. So it's multiple companies that are doing the various different fraud prevention, and that's the fraud stack.
You said the irony is that fraudsters fly through legacy forms while real customers get stuck. How does reducing friction down to just a phone number help both consumer experience and fraud prevention?
Yeah, so that's a great question, and that's the great thing about VeriQual. It allows that customer to go through the process of identity verification, credit prequalification, like 30 seconds, less than 30 seconds. And what's great about it is when I'm demoing the product, and it can be used at dealerships or wherever on the lot, I just watch. I don't even say anything. It's that intuitive. You don't have to explain anything to the customer. You just say, look, scan the QR code, or they click on a CTA on the site or anywhere, marketplace or an advertising campaign. And within 20, 30 seconds, they're all the way through, identity verified, credit pre-qualified, and now they're ready to proceed with the deal. It is that seamless, frictionless, fast, accurate. So the leads that we generate through VeriQual, it's a CDP's dream, right? Because all that information is accurate, it's correct, it's a correct name, it's a real phone number, and real credit. And that's why we have a patent pending on it.
You presented single vehicle prequal here at Used Car Week. How does tying the prequal directly to a VIN change the way dealers engage shoppers and eliminate junk leads?
Yeah, so the single vehicle prequal, instead of just doing a credit prequalification by itself, we attach a vehicle inventory to it, a single piece of vehicle inventory. So that way we're returning real payments based upon real credit and real finance and lease programs, whether it's used car leasing, which we'll talk about in a minute, or if it's a captive lease program, finance program, we calculated all of that in the lender waterfall so that the lead that we generate, it's not based upon or a self-reported credit score. It's based upon real credit, and that's the key to VeriQual and real credit prequalification. You got to have all real information.
Dealers seem overwhelmed with unqualified leads and are tired of polluted data. How does identity verified prequalification change that conversation?
Yeah, so when we create a lead through VeriQual, the data that's coming out of that is 100% accurate. Real name, real phone number, real credit. So it's first party data, it's clean, it's ready to be closed with the credit prequal, the deal structure prequal, it's ready to go. And that's why we're seeing very high conversion, not just on click CTA to a lead, but also from lead to a sale because it's seamless, it's frictionless, it moves through so fast. Consumers love it because it doesn't slow down. And actually, dealers are able to work more deals within a period of time versus in the past where what does it take? What's the average time to get a deal done? It's crazy, right?
Terry, you're also speaking across the industry about affordability. How does combining real time verified prequal with leasing, especially used car leasing, help solve the monthly payment crisis?
Yeah, well, that's a great question, and that's what we're dealing with in the industry right now. And as president of the National Vehicle Leasing Association and a longtime 25 plus year involved in digital platform leasing, which we created back in 2000 with Lease Compare, the affordability issue through leasing, whether it's new car or used car. It's funny because I'll talk to dealers and a lot of them are like, I'll ask them, what's your lease penetration? And I tell them if it's not at least 85%, we have a problem. And what I've realized here at the show, talking to dealers, talking to lenders, they're all like, gosh, yeah, we can't get traction. Well, even new, you have to subsidize the heck out of stuff to get people to do it. That's not the problem because traditional financing, traditional leasing, lease is going to win every time. Okay, so it's how and when you present leasing. And what I found here was the customer comes in, they get the customer into the store, they they get usually on a pre-qualified or they're pre-qualified or they get them approved. They're doing a full credit app, hard pull, whatever. Once they get into the F&I box, that F&I person does not want to potentially take a chance on losing the deal by interjecting some other type of financing like leasing, right? It's beyond their capability of being able to talk about leasing. And that's really not the time to do it anyway. If you're trying to switch somebody to something else after you've gotten them approved on something, that's that's not good. I would agree. So what we have to do is talk about leasing up front. And unfortunately, the salespeople are not given the tools to quote leasing. They don't even know how to explain leasing. So there's an education problem. There's an issue with quoting accurate lease payments based upon real credit. And with single vehicle prequal, that's what we're able to do. We're bringing the payment, the leasing up front. And when we talk really about used car leasing, now new car leasing, okay, so what on average on the industry average is what in the 20%, okay, whatever, which should be higher than that. But on used car leasing, nobody's doing it. What we're doing on the used car leasing side is working with national used car leasing lenders like US Bank and Westlake, integrating their programs into our platform, our single vehicle prequal platform, so that we can quote those payments up front. The consumer sees that and they're like, wow, okay, that's a great payment. Or at least it's a payment that they think they've seen some type of past history of those types of payments and they're like, okay, I can do that.
Terry, it seems you've been very direct that lenders need to take a more active role in fraud prevention. What should lenders be doing today that they're just not doing?
Well, so I, and this is another conversation we've been having here with lenders and dealers at Used Car Week, and that is the lenders need to take a more proactive role in helping the dealers manage the fraud. Because we talked to a couple of industry experts here, and even though if a fraud deal happens to a dealer and they have to buy a deal back, yeah, they have insurance. But every time you make a claim, that affects your insurance rate, so your garage insurance. So now a lot of them are not even submitting claims. They're just taking the losses. The dealers are. So that was something that came up. And what I think what we're going to is the lenders have the ability to evaluate platforms like VeriQual, where we're able to do that identity verification. The lenders can be like, look, if you're a dealer and you're going to be sending deals through us, you need to use a tool like VeriQual. Now, it doesn't have to be VeriQual, but right now we're probably in the forefront of what we're doing and what's out there in the marketplace. But I think the lenders have to be able to help direct that because it's only going to get worse. And I don't see dealers, they're so involved with everything they're doing, they don't have really the bandwidth to really look at programs and figure out what's going to help me get through because they're getting bombarded. Again, the fraud stack we put together that kind of helps them, that shows them the different levels of fraud prevention. And so I think, but the lenders, we're looking at the lenders taking more of a role in helping the dealers.
Terry, you've described fraud protection like a Swiss cheese model. No single solution catches everything. What does a modern fraud stack look like, and why can't dealers rely on just one vendor anymore?
Yeah, well, because one vendor does not solve from click to deal. Okay. And that's what the fraud stack does from the very click to all the way through signing the deal. If it's an offsite, again, MAV signs one of our fraud stack participants in the consortium. And if a deal is done offsite, MAV sign comes in and makes sure the deal's not fraudulent. And that happens all the time if you're not paying attention to the last mile or when you're signing taking delivery out of the dealership. So there's different pieces of the fraud stack. The higher, which is we're at the very top, where we're collecting those leads, that CTA and the interaction with the customer right up front. If it gets past us, then you've got driver's license scan, you've got various other components that you'll be doing within the fraud stack. But each one of those, you really want to make, and what we try to do is make sure we're using the best of the best. And I learned in our session there were a couple of other companies there, including Experian, that have other components. And there was a couple of other companies that said, well, we do this. And I'm like, okay, that sounds interesting. I think we ought to look at putting that in the fraud stack. So it's not just about me. It's not just about one company. It's that fraud stack could grow, right? So we'll see how, as fraud doesn't sleep. The fraudsters don't sleep, especially with AI. So they're constantly out there trying to figure out how to defraud, in this case, dealers and lenders. And it's not going to stop. It's going to change. It'll pivot. And we have to stay on top of it.
At Used Car Week, you also mentioned that fraud is getting so serious that dealerships may need a dedicated person responsible for fraud prevention, almost like a new job role in the store. Can you explain why this role is becoming necessary and what it might look like as a future career opportunity?
Exactly. That came up during my session. We were all talking about, wow, dealers really need like a fraud prevention specialist. And we were all like, yeah, there's another career opportunity, fraud prevention specialist. And I think especially the bigger dealers, the larger dealers that really have more to lose. I mean, they're all going to have something to lose, and even the smaller ones, right? They're all going to have something to lose. So incorporating a fraud prevention specialist could be very interesting for a career opportunity.
For dealers and lenders who want to understand their fraud exposure or need help building a fraud stack, what's the best way to reach you and start that conversation?
Yeah, I'm pretty much reachable all the time. LinkedIn, email, even phone. My information's readily available. Usually I would start with LinkedIn because that's the easiest way for me to validate, who I'm talking to and all of that. And if we're already connected on LinkedIn, which is a good possibility, my phone number's on there, my email's on there. I reply to private messages on PMs on LinkedIn. That's really the best place to reach me initially if you want to reach out. And if we're already connected, all my information is on there. So, and I welcome the opportunity to collaborate and work with others in the industry because it's about partnerships. It's not about one company doing it all. And if you're one company and you say you do it all, that is not something that, I think dealers and lenders really need to pay attention and look at what's going on if you think there's one company that's going to save you from all the different potential fraud issues. So collaboration, partnerships, that's the way we're going to move the industry forward and protect the consumer, dealers, and lenders.
I think we're all seeing a lot more need for cross collaboration. Terry, thanks for this special edition at Used Car Week. Really appreciate it.
Thanks, Jay. See you next time.